Yamaha needed a good start to MotoGP 2026, and it's actually had a bit of a painful one. Not only all the talk about losing its lead rider, Fabio Quartararo, for next year, it first lost him for this week, and then had to pull out of an entire day of testing, at least itself. Val, what is going on with Yamaha right now?
Yeah, as you say, eventful start to the test. Fabio injured in a crash on the first day as a quick get off at turn 5, which is a nasty place to fall. He had some significant abrasions to his left arm, but more notably a fracture to the middle finger, I think, on his right hand. And he decided to withdraw from the test to make sure that finger heals up effectively for Thailand, the test and the opener. Now, between that decision being made and the crash itself, Fabio did go back out on track. He actually set what is currently Yamaha's quickest time of these 2 days, but he also had an issue with the bike, an engine issue that Yamaha has looked into since then, decided it doesn't quite understand and particularly like what it's seen. So as a precaution for now, for the safety of its riders, non-Quartararo riders, Quartararo is done for the test, but all the other riders and all the other manufacturers' riders on track, it has parked its bikes for now. So no running today and maybe no running tomorrow, but we don't know yet.
Simon's on site at Sepang. He's been talking to Yamaha bosses and heard from all the riders yesterday. Here's what he's found out.
We don't know exactly what the nature of the problem that has stopped Yamaha is. And to be fair, I don't think they quite know yet. The next step in their process is going to be a detailed examination of this issue. Once the team in Italy, where half of the kind of the engineering department is based, wakes up and can examine the data that the team in Japan, who, because they're in the same time zone as us roughly, have already been looking at. So the next step will be to try and figure out where that issue is. But from what we know and what they've said already, and what they know as well, this has to be something pretty substantial, because they've said that it's kind of a critical safety issue, which means it's an issue that they believe, if it goes catastrophically wrong in a major engine failure, will spray either coolant or oil on the rider, the tyre and the circuit, because there's no other thing really, apart from a kind of a dramatic seizure, which doesn't really happen with these bikes anymore, that could lead to something like this where it's a safety factor that they think they can't go on track with it. They're aided a little bit by the fact that they've already had 3 days of testing, and that gives them a little bit of a buffer. But we would imagine that there's going to be a lot of sleepless hours over the next few, especially for the guys in Japan, as they work with the guys in Italy to try and figure out the nature of this problem and see if they can find some sort of a solution for the final day of testing, be that a further limit on engine power, like we know that this model already has to an extent, or whether or not it's something that needs to be addressed with new parts, which is in theory doable for the start of the next test in Thailand quite easily, or even a new engine, because we know that this is only a prototype standby engine. This is not the one that they hope to kind of contest the season with. We spoke to Alex Rins yesterday after the first day of testing, and he said that there was another version of the engine that they were expecting in a month or two that would have more power, because we can see in the speed trap times right now that this current engine is still not where they want it to be in terms of top speed. So there's work going on at Yamaha that will hopefully rectify this, and work that will hopefully mean that this isn't a complete disaster. As it stands, they've been aided a little bit, because while they've lost this morning's track running, as you can probably see from behind me, we've had the typical Sepang 4 p.m. rain shower after a kind of a 2-hour super hot phase where no one was on track anyway because the temperatures were too high. It's looking right now like the rain has stopped at 4:30, but the track's only open another hour and a half, and if we see anyone out for anything more than the last 30 minutes, maybe to do some time attack work, then I'd be surprised, to be honest. I think the main running of this afternoon has been lost to this rain, so actually something that works in Yamaha's favour a little bit. But it's hard to see this as being too much of a significant step back for them anyway, given where the project is right now, and given the fact that this year, and these tests in particular, are all about laying the groundwork for 2027 and for starting the development of what is essentially, from speaking to all the guys, a brand new bike. We spoke to Jack Miller after his 3 days of shakedown testing, and he said that, essentially it doesn't even feel like a Yamaha when you're sitting on it. Your body is making contact with bits of the bike that it didn't make contact with last year because it's such a new shape. So this is radically different, and honestly, losing a day or even losing 2 days if tomorrow doesn't happen for them as well won't be the end of the world. This is why they introduced the V4 right now at the start of 2026, or the end of 2025 as it was, and not in a year's time whenever we go to the new engine regulations. It was to get over these teething problems. The only issue with that is whether or not it's come too late, as it sounds like it already has, to retain Fabio Quartararo's services. There are all these rumours about him already being Yamaha or Honda bound for next year, in which case, especially considering the fact that he got hurt yesterday in an incident, I should say, completely unrelated to the engine development, but the fact that he's already at home and wasn't going to be here anyway means that I don't think any of today's mishap for Yamaha is probably going to affect his decision making one way or another. So all in all, this is part of the learning process. This is part of the teething problems you have whenever you move to a brand new engine configuration in a very short period of time.
So Val, obviously Yamaha did at least get the shakedown running, but it's still missing out on a massive amount of mileage this week. How is that going to affect its chances at the start of the season?
Yeah, I think that part is probably a red herring. Honestly, I'm not too worried about the fact that it's missing the test. It is very unusual to have in the modern era of MotoGP, especially in the final year of the regulations, to have somebody have to withdraw from a full day of testing because of a reliability issue. It feels like that just doesn't happen these days. These bikes have been running and running and running year after year, and they might have an engine blow sometimes, but they're never going to have one blow to an extent where you have to park everything. But again, we must remember this is a new project. This is the kind of thing that happens when you change engine configuration for the final year of a regulation cycle, which is anyway something that they're doing also to best prepare themselves for the 850s in 2027. So this is part of the game. This is part of the pain that you accept in committing to this to make sure you're best prepared for 27. It's not too worrying. It doesn't have to signify that they're going to withdraw their entire fleet randomly in Thailand or some of the other upcoming rounds, Qatar or whatever. But it does, I think, quite nicely illustrate that there is so much catching up here to do, despite all of Yamaha's current MotoGP experience. They've not been a V4 manufacturer, and they're entering the V4 world, and there's going to be some growing pains. There hasn't been any such sort of issue when Augusto Fernandez was doing his wildcards last year on the prototype V4. I don't believe there's been any such issue or issue of such significance in any of the testing that they've carried out with their variety of riders. But clearly this engine is being iterated on and on and on. And as Simon mentioned, they are going to bring an upgrade basically ASAP to start the season. So under their concession status in their current predicament, this is very much a work in progress. Now, the competitiveness portion of it is what's interesting, because the lost mileage, whatever, they've done the shakedown. They're going to be okay in that sense. It sounds like even Quartararo, when he was withdrawing from the test, he said, we did kind of what we had to do. What we had to do doesn't include like setup work and rider comfort work necessarily. That's the part that's potentially getting squeezed and sacrificed. I think it's less important at Sepang than it would be losing it at Buriram ahead of a race weekend at Buriram. So if you lose it at Sepang test, I mean, some of that stuff might almost be the Sepang kind of race weekend work, except the race weekend isn't soon. So it's not as relevant. It is more that you're tuning rider preferences. It is going to hurt rider competitiveness a bit. I think certainly less than ideal for rookie Toprak Razgatlioglu. I'm more interested though right now in where the bike is at, and I suspect we might be entering the season in a situation where maybe honing the rider preferences isn't the most important thing. Maybe the most important thing is just keeping the bike on that linear trajectory. I mean, again, they ran in the shakedown. They weren't fastest in the shakedown. Fabio Quartararo, again, was the fastest of the Yamahas in the shakedown, but he was behind the Honda tester, Aleix Espargaro, the KTM tester, Paul Espargaro. Those happen to be brothers, by the way. But yeah, there's obviously shakedown times you don't want to read into too much. We don't know how full tilt Fabio was going, but in his media debrief before he backed out of the test, he basically confirmed his hunch that the bike isn't really ready to fight yet. It's just not quite there yet, which to me makes total sense given how new it is, and how, even though Yamaha will never publicly say it, a lot of this season just has to be about, proving the concept for 27. And I think they're gonna take some kicks, especially early kicks along the way. This kind of thing doesn't help, but at the same time, it almost doesn't hugely matter. And they're not that far off. I mean, again, they're half a second off Quartararo's best time of the test of 57.8. I think shakedown something like a 57.6. It's not great, but it's sort of there. It's not terrible. They're kind of in the vicinity. It's the kind of season to take a few beatings, and if you've potentially lost Quartararo already anyway, as seems like it may have been the case, it's the time to regroup, gather yourself, and prepare for the next era of Yamaha, whatever that might look like.